because I did not get it to run it up the chain and get official approval from the Attorney General, I'm going to give this brief disclaimer, and that the views and opinions expressed in this presentation are my own. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or views of Attorney General Jeff Landry or the Louisiana Department of Justice. The content and materials presented do not imply the expression of any opinion whatsoever on the part of the Attorney General or DOJ concerning the legality or propriety of the issues discussed herein, and the facts and materials contained in this presentation are for informational purposes only and are not intended to be and should not be construed as the provision of legal advice. Enough lawyer talk. So, the goals that I've tried to meet in this presentation are to give a recap of the AG's and DOJ's involvement with the project, which just began very recently, to address DOTD's response to the issues that were raised by the Attorney General, both in correspondence from Secretary Wilson and in the materials that were provided in response to the AG's request for analyses and studies, and then to give a bit of a status update about where things currently stand. So the involvement began November 10th of last year when the AG sent a letter to Secretary Wilson. The letter, the topic was directed specifically to the plan to restrict the lane capacity on I-10. It expressed concern regarding the information that had been available to the public and the public involvement that was allowed. It noted that the environmental assessment and the finding of no significant impact that had been issued by FHWA had been issued based upon the premise that that existing traffic would be maintained. The responses to public comments that had been issued by DOTD in the course of the environmental assessment also had indicated that capacity would be maintained. The lane restrictions were inconsistent with representations to the Louisiana legislature made just a few months before the letter was sent in August of 2022. And it also requested that DOTD provide evaluations and any analyses showing that restricting the lane capacity on I-10 would be beneficial to the public. And so some of the things that were cited in the AG's letter was the Stage 0 feasibility study. This is the very beginning determining what alternatives were going to be considered in the environmental assessment. So the purpose and need, as stated in the feasibility study, says that the purpose and need of the proposed project is to reduce congestion and improve traffic flow throughout the I-10 corridor, to improve safety throughout the I-10 corridor, and accommodate continuing economic and population growth in Baton Rouge. Lane restrictions don't seem to be fulfilling that purpose. But one of the things that I found interesting in this document is in the, it's called an environmental checklist, and there's a question. It says, do you know of any sensitive community or cultural issues related to the project? And this is 2016. And in the information that had been provided by the public at that point, the DOTD noted there may be concerns relative to business operations during construction, and so construction phasing is going to be considered in the context of the environmental assessment, that's stage 1. So here we have the environmental assessment. In the environmental assessment, which was submitted to FHWA and approved, it says all SECs, you may have heard references to segment 1, the project gets chopped up into smaller pieces. That's the acronym that they used in this document for a segment. Had the following primary constructability constraints during construction that had to be taken into consideration. You have to maintain 3 lanes of traffic in each direction at all times along I-10. So we've got some public comments and official responses from DOTD. And this is just a selection. I'm not giving an exhaustive account because there was a lot of comments and a lot of responses. But here's a comment. I'm concerned about how the Washington Street exit will impact the community. Will this improvement create more congestion for South Boulevard Terrace and Eddie Robinson? DOTD has not studied the impacts of traffic on other areas. Please consider an alternative route for freight during construction, like Highway 190. Alternative routes during construction will be developed in a draft transportation management plan, TMP, which will be complete in mid-2019. Remember that date, mid-2019. How many lanes will 110 have and for how long? If the question is relative to how many lanes will be open during construction, the answer is 3 in each direction during daylight hours with the potential for lane closures during the overnight hours. Traffic analysis shows that 2 lanes are required on I-10 eastbound from the bridge and 2 lanes are required from 110 southbound to I-10 eastbound. This configuration makes up, went the wrong way. Anyway, you get the gist. This one I found very interesting. This individual was asking what will be the increase in time travel delays for several different routes. DOTD responded, same way for each one. We can't speculate on your travel time or which routes you presently use. Travel delays are anticipated during construction. 3 travel lanes are proposed to be open and flowing during daylight hours, which should minimize travel delays. So the DOTD sent their environmental assessment to the FHWA. FHWA approved and issued a finding of no significant impact. It's FONSI for short. In the FONSI that was approved by FHWA, they talked about the reasons that other alternatives for the project had been excluded. And one of those reasons was major impacts to travel time during construction because of this alternative's inability to maintain 3 lanes of traffic in each direction on I-10 may result in increased cost of living and a decreased quality of life. So here we go, and now we're in November 2020, or I'm sorry, this is actually August 24th, 2022. This is in a presentation to the legislature. The ground rules, and this was Mr. Taylor, who is DOTD's consultant, say you must maintain existing I-10 mainline traffic through the corridor. This is after they had already announced that they were going to begin restricting capacity, and they had already admitted that I-10 is already over capacity as it is. So it's impossible to restrict the number of lanes and maintain the existing traffic along I-10. So the Attorney General followed up again on November 21st, which was 10 days after that first letter, 11 days. And mainly, there was a meeting between staff personnel at DOJ and DOTD. I attended on behalf of DOJ. It was confirmed at that point that the lane restrictions were not limited merely to I-10, but also included I-110. The responses to the documents that the AG had requested were not forthcoming. He noted that, and that there seemed to be some delay or some issue with the reason that DOT couldn't provide the analyses and studies. At that point, during that meeting, it was relayed that, well, the final decision to do these lane restrictions has not yet been made. We're going to perform a reevaluation to see if the FONSI that FHWA approved and issued will still be valid if we decide to change the project by reducing this capacity. And then it also raised the issue of the news report immediately after the first AG letter went out, where Secretary Wilson stated it is absolutely not true that capacity on I-10 would be reduced to 1 lane in either direction. Here's a little clip that I pulled from the Advocate. I-10 in Baton Rouge won't go down to 1 lane each way during construction. That's the headline. Attorney General Jeff Landry claims state intends to trim a stretch of Interstate 10 in Baton Rouge in each direction, but Transportation Chief Sean Wilson said Friday there is no such plan. That is absolutely not true. So to break a little bit from chronology, to answer the question, how many lanes and for how long? The best description that I found in all the documents that I've looked for came from an internal DOTD document, meeting minutes for their traffic task force is what they call it. And of course, you know, the first phase is, we may even be in it right now, I'm not certain. It doesn't involve any lane restrictions. But phase 2 lasts approximately 1 year. This phase will be the most restrictive to interstate traffic by only allowing 2 lanes in each direction for a majority of the work zone. However, I-10 and I-110 are limited to 1 lane at their interchange. Many existing ramps will be closed or reconfigured in this phase. Next phase, you know, they always say it's about a year, 14 months, that I-10 will be 2 lanes and 1 lane. But I-110 is going to remain 1 lane southbound for another year, another 15 months. And one of the things that was cited in the AG's, oh, actually, I've got this. So some of you may have seen this. This is a DOTD or Franklin and Associates slide that they often show, which shows the lane restrictions right at the I-10, I-110 interchange. And so just to show you, they always talk about, and they've labeled the restrictions on I-10. They don't point out where these one arrows, currently you've got 3 lanes going from I-10 westbound to I-110 northbound. It's going from 3 to 1 lane. From I-10 southbound, I-110 southbound to I-10 eastbound, you've got 2 lanes currently. That one's also going down to 1 lane. So in the AG's letter, he states, one such study suggested that reducing I-110 southbound to 1 lane prior to its merge with I-10 could result in more than 800% increase in travel times for individuals using I-110. And it also confirmed what had been stated in that November 18th meeting, that DOTD was working on putting together a reevaluation to submit to FHWA to have them determine whether or not the finding of no significant impact would remain valid, even though they were restricting lane capacity. And of course, without a FONSI, you either go to an environmental impact statement, the EIS, which takes much longer and is much more expensive, or you go back to what you originally stated that you were going to do. You can't proceed with the project without an active environmental approval. Secretary Wilson's correspondence also acknowledged that the EA only evaluated the 3 lanes and that the presentations and official responses from DOTD were that they would keep 3 lanes open. Asserts without support, and I've not seen any, that the lane restrictions would reduce the time of construction from 8 to 4 years, and touts their robust traffic mitigation plan, which consists of advanced signing telling people to stay away from Baton Rouge because the traffic there is terrible. Telework policy for DOTD, which of course the lane restrictions will begin when after the new governor takes office, and so Sean Wilson will no longer presumably be Secretary of DOTD and cannot commit for other state agencies, and I've not seen any other state agencies who said that they're going to have a telework policy. Coordination with the trucking industry, if anyone has watched the legislative hearings, the trucking industry does not appear to be on board with DOTD's plan, and then they're going to develop an incident management plan. Hasn't been developed yet, but they're going to do it. So at the conclusion of Dr. Wilson's letter, he states, you will be receiving shortly more than 7,000 additional pages of engineering and technical analysis and evaluations that have gone into the decision-making process for the project, in addition to another 1,000 pages or so of procurement files, including the contractor's proposal. The sheer volume of professional work product is a testament to the competent efforts of DOTD to deliver this project dating back to 2015. So of the more than 7,000 additional pages of engineering and technical analysis that the AG received in response to his request, 2,844 of those pages were the stage 0 feasibility analysis that had been completed in 2016. Does not address lane restrictions. 826 included 10 versions of the traffic management plan for utility relocation. Again, no discussion of lane restrictions. 690 pages of a different, everything that will lead up to the lane restrictions, they've got a TMP for. No discussion of lane restrictions. And then draft interchange modification report, it's referred to as an IMR. No lane restriction analysis, 5,105 pages. So Dr. Wilson did follow through with his promise. He provided well over 7,000 pages of technical analysis and evaluation, 0 pages of which actually addressed the lane restrictions and how traffic would be managed under that scenario. So from the documents, and I've submitted 4 separate public records requests. The DOTD would not agree to just collegially exchange documents. They wanted formal public records requests to be sent. So I've sent 4 of them, and I'm going to just kind of briefly discuss some of the more relevant documents and information that I got in what was provided. So what we've got, the first one is the CMAR contract. This is the pre-construction services contract. The CMAR contractor basically coordinates with the design firm to address certain issues and at the front end as opposed to after the design is complete. And so this is the contract that provides for those services. And Exhibit E is the CMAR contractor's statement of qualifications. It's their proposal that they had presented to the department saying, this is how we see the project. This is how we would propose moving forward with it. So that you can see it said, and I skipped over, but it proposes maintenance of traffic innovations. Innovation number one, there are 7 innovations in this proposal, 5 of which are directly related to maintenance of traffic. This is the proposal that DOTD selected in order to give them the contract. Very first one, construction phasing concept for I-10 eastbound mainline ramp. You're going to take the I-10 it says the mainline diverges, and what they planned to do, or proposed to study at least, was to minimize inconvenience to the traveling public during construction. We've developed an innovative staging concept that can maintain true travel lanes on the ramp. And what they're referring to is the right after the bridge. So I-10 eastbound, where you currently, they say there's disagreement whether there's 2 lanes or 1 lanes there, because one drops off to Washington Street. They're saying, look, we've got a plan. You don't have to shut that down to 1 lane at all. We can keep it at 2 lanes. Second one, project's current scope of work recommends the replacement of the bridge structures. I-10 is heavily used in 6 lanes. Any reduction to current capacity on I-10 can further exacerbate congestion in the Baton Rouge area. So to address DOTD's project goal of minimized inconvenience to the traveling public during construction, innovation number 2 has been developed to include accelerated bridge construction methods and use of prefabricated bridge components. 3, temporary median connection for maintenance of traffic. This gets into more technical aspects. The point being is that the proposer who is working on this project and assisting in the design says, look, we've looked at the environmental documents. We understand you've got to maintain existing capacity for this project. Look at all of these ways that we're going to cut time from the project, we're going to cut money from the project, and we're going to maintain existing capacity on the interstate just like you said you were going to do for 6 years, just like FHWA approved in your FONSI. I don't see where any of these 5, actually Coleman would likely be interested in number 5, which is, look, you considered an entirely new City Parks Lake Bridge. We think that you can rehab that bridge and you can save time and money and still have a good finished product that will last just as long, and you'll be able to maintain existing traffic while we do it. So with that note, like I said, I've seen nowhere where they studied any of these 5 innovations that were proposed that would maintain existing traffic and would meet the environmental approvals and would save the project time and would save the project money. I skipped over one again, too. Back. So another interesting document, it was titled, and so I have no proof that this was actually presented to the governor, but the title of the slideshow presentation was May 20, 2021 Governor's Brief. So I assume it was. That's the front of the slide, and I've basically just taken slides directly out of that presentation and put them here. So here we've got a 3-lane maintaining existing traffic compared to the planned lane reductions. And so you've got community impacts, because they're comparing which one's better. We don't know. We don't know what the community impacts are from this. 2-lane option will potentially increase travel time during construction, but will reduce the overall construction duration by potentially up to 1 year. We've also got scheduled 2-lane scenario, 3.5 years for 3 versus 3.5 for 2 versus 4.5 for 3. And you're going to save $31 million. I've not seen any justification for either of these either. Again, they had proposed cutting cost and time with maintaining existing capacity. There's no comparison between what it would look like maintaining capacity and using those cost and time cutting savings and using the 3-lane one with those cost and time savings. This is the one that I found very interesting. So of course the issue is whether there's a significant impact that's going to be caused by these lane restrictions. What they state to the governor is that, look, there is going to be extreme pain for a year Well, I'm not Rocket's thesaurus, but to me, I think extreme pain pretty much equals a significant impact. So another interesting document was this correspondence that was sent by Secretary Wilson to the Joint Transportation Committee beginning of November last year. And he states that, look, we've performed a feasibility analysis pursuant to this state statute, and we've determined that it's impossible to maintain it, to just keep work to non-peak hours. We've got to shut down that lane. We've got to do this. It's not feasible to do it any other way. We've developed a robust traffic mitigation plan, and we're going to save $50 million. So this is their robust, or no, I'm sorry, their feasibility study. Not the 3,000-page document that they spent 2 years developing, 3 pages, no, not signed and sealed by any engineer, not signed by anyone, actually. You don't know who the author is. It basically just goes and says, this document constitutes a feasibility study. You're already in trouble if you got to put quotes around what you're purporting to draft. In accordance with 48-279, because the Department of Transportation and Development has determined it is not feasible to perform the required construction work during non-peak hours. They've already got their conclusion before they discuss what the issues are and what the analysis is. They state all reconstruction options, including the selected option, require maintenance of traffic measures that require shifting traffic and affecting the geometry for extended periods lasting 24 hours a day for 1 year or more during each of the primary stages of construction. Just simply not true. The environmental assessment that was approved, the FONSI that was approved, did not, it basically said you can't do that. The feasibility study said it's not feasible for you to reduce capacity on this roadway. They also talk about their traffic control measures, which are, again, the same mitigation methods that they've talked about a whole lot, which is all voluntary and nothing that they have the authority to actually require or implement. And then this was the first and only time, I think, that I saw that the plan is to reduce speed limits to 45 miles per hour throughout the corridor. So these are some options, and I think that these may relate to one of the things that Coleman was talking about with their plan to add an additional lane. So there wasn't a whole lot of explanation as to what this document actually was, but it says 1 lane on I-10 eastbound after LA1 and 2 lanes on the Mississippi River Bridge. What I found interesting, again, this was not a study. What they presented a lot of was PowerPoint presentations that purported to summarize analyses and studies that had been performed. Not the studies or analyses themselves, just the summary. And so, the results present an average for all vehicles across the Baton Rouge metro area. Whenever they study their traffic model, it's in I think it goes to St. Gabriel, and it's across the bridge, and it's all over the place. And so what they say is it represents an average of the increased travel time that all of the people that are in that area will experience. So if you're in St. Gabriel and you're going to your cousin's house across the road, you're not going to have any additional travel time out there because you're not affected by what's going on Interstate 10. But that's used to basically lower and make it appear as if the people who are actually affected and impacted will have a much less impact than it's actually expected. But what's really interesting is that they say stage 2 still causes a significant impact compared to existing conditions. So they know that stage 2, as they are planning with lane restrictions, is going to cause a significant impact. And they're looking for methods to avoid that in order to get that reevaluation approved and maintain their finding of no significant impact. And here they're saying, okay, here's one option, we can throw that out because it doesn't fix it. There's only 2 of these documents that had options, but both of them still, this gives a little bit better description of what they were considering. The submittal consists of a PowerPoint slide summarizing the traffic analysis results of 2 options under consideration for stage 2 construction. Facilitating 2 lanes for the westbound direction on the flyover ramp of I-10, which I believe is what Coleman may have been describing, and reducing I-10 to 1 lane eastbound prior to the Mississippi River Bridge. Again, stage 2 still causes significant impact compared to existing conditions. So, I've actually gone a lot faster and done a lot better than I thought I was going to do. So the current status, where basically things were left off was DOTD saying, we've not made a final decision. We're taking a look at it, we're compiling our document and our studies and all of our information, and we're submitting that to FHWA. I was told at that November 18th meeting that they anticipated doing that right after the first of the year. So after the first of the year, I emailed DOTD and I asked them. And the response I got was, according to the project staff, we are anticipating submitting to FHWA this week. Per the stewardship agreement, FHWA's review should take no longer than 30 days. So the following week, after I didn't hear anything more, I wrote back and said, so, have you heard back? Do you have a plan or an anticipated timeline now for when you're going to submit? It says, I followed up after receiving your email and the reevaluation still has not been submitted. Our staff has had some difficulty in getting guidance from FHWA, which has gone through some recent staff changes on how they want us to approach. Once we have guidance and something submitted, we can send a copy, but I will need you to submit a new public records request at that time. January 23rd, earlier this week, followed up again. I'm afraid I haven't gotten caught up on voicemails yet. As of today, FHW has indicated they're going to provide guidance by Friday of this week, so 2 days from now. Assuming they do so, we will prepare and submit the reevaluation thereafter. Submittal timing will be dependent on the guidance we receive. And then remember that traffic management plan that was supposed to have been completed in 2019? I had been asking about that and hadn't seen anything. I've seen traffic management plans for everything up to those lane restrictions. So the response and this is basically, he's addressing the reevaluation at first. But let's see here. It says the prolonged lane closures will be included in stage 2 construction under the GMP, guaranteed maximum price. It's a part of the CMAR process. This traffic management plan is currently under development and has not been finalized. We expect this document could be available anywhere from tomorrow to 3 months from now. So we don't know what people are going to do whenever we implement these lane restrictions, but maybe in 3 months we'll have some guidance that we can provide them or some direction that we can give them.